Living History, American Combat Stories as told by those who were there.
I joined the Air Force in 1951 as a result of receiving a postcard in the mail from the U.S. Army. And as I loved aircraft, aviation, I decided to go down and enlist in the U.S. Air Force. And that took precedence over being drafted in the Army. I did so, and in 1951 I went to basic training. Sampson Naval Base was taken over, that's upstate New York, was taken over by the U.S. Air Force. So I had my basic training at Sampson. After leaving Sampson and being asked what would I like to do, I said I'd like to be a pilot. They said, you can't be a pilot unless you're a college graduate, which you are not. I said, well, just put me up in an aircraft. I'll be a crew member, anything up in the sky. So they said, all right, we'll slot you for aerial gunnery training. And I was shipped to Lowry Air Force Base outside of Denver. And the sad part of that was that there were two sections. One was an aerial gunner, and one was an armament specialist. The armament specialist obviously did not fly, the aerial gunner did. And when my name was called, I was put into the armament group. And that was not what my desire was. So I had a meeting with the first sergeant, which I called for, and I said, I really almost poured my heart out. I said, I can't do this, I want to be a crew member. He said, well, go back to the barracks in a few days. I'll call you if one of the candidates for aerial gunnery flunks his flight physical. He called me. And I went back, and that's how I started my training as an aerial gunner. Lowry Air Force Base, 36 weeks of gunnery training. You almost built the system at times. It was a General Electric created program, all computerized, and it led the guns and tracked, depending on the speed of the oncoming aircraft. It could be a P-51 or it could be a MiG-15 in our case. The turret actually tracked in front of, much like shooting a clay pigeon at a range. You just aim at a point in front of it. So after that, I was sent to Randolph Air Force Base in Texas and had more training there, more in-flight training. And one of the funny parts about that is that we were sent down to Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Arizona, where we had the stationary gunnery systems mounted on pedestals. And the instructors would fly a drone by, and you were supposed to shoot at that drone. We did, but unbeknownst to us, they had programmed it so the guns would not hit the target. We decided we're going to use the old Kentucky windage. We're going to do it manually, and we're going to lead it off. And we shot down a few, and they said, that's enough, guys, no more. From there, we went to Forbes Air Force Base, Topeka, Kansas. We were crewed up there. And subsequently, we were transferred by MATS. We went to Hawaii. We went to Wake Island, Kwajalein, and then we landed at Tachikawa Air Force Base in Japan, where another military transport took us from there to Yokota Air Force Base north of Tokyo. There we flew our missions, flying night missions, with Sharan type of bombing, navigation type of bombing. I flew 25 combat missions out of Yokota, average mission 9 to 10 hours. I would not go back in the tail until probably about halfway into after the Sea of Japan, you coast into Korea. I'd go back then and open my little door and pull down a seat in back of me, which was on a rail, and that was my seat. And I'd get my system all armed and ready to go. And we had a test fire. We're going over to the Sea of Japan, make sure the guns were operating properly. And then we'd go up to altitude, maybe 22 to 25,000, and coast into Korea to our target. We had targets that were marshalling yards for railroad, bridges, airfield, and then we had the biggie, as they call it, and that was in the top northern part of Korea on the Yellow River, and right on the side of that was Manchuria, China, and they had a hydroelectric plant called the Suiho Hydroelectric Plant, and it supported about 80% of the power that went into North Korea. So the powers in the U.S. Air Force said, well, let's take out the bridge. We were not supposed to hit the bridge itself. We were to bomb the hydroelectric facility where they had all the generators and equipment. We had the largest bombs I ever saw in my life. We had 2,000-pound armor-piercing bombs. Of course, the B-29 could carry only 20,000 pounds of bombs. So we had 10 of those beautiful things on board, and they did the job. Not completely, but it did a job to slow it down and put it out of commission for a while. That was the most difficult mission, and on it they lost a few planes immediately over the target. Any aircraft was fierce. I mean fierce. They had searchlights and the anti-aircraft guns that were controlled by Russians, and they had the most sophisticated weapons. No matter how high you were flying, the searchlights would pick you up. And as I said, I could look down at my watch in the tail at night and tell time. And the sky was just a brilliant white light. All the planes picked up flak. We picked up some flak, but fortunately it did not impede our progress. It picked it up in the wing, returned to base, and shortly thereafter I said that was enough. I had my 25 missions in. That was the biggie that I flew. Enjoyed all of the missions.